cannot therefore, and this will be the complaint which is always levelled at you, and it's levelled at you by the Muslim Council of Britain and others. You cannot castigate an entire group of people for the outrageous ideas of some of its members. And I know plenty of Christians who think similarly on the issue of gay rights.
Absolutely, and I acknowledge that. I'm talking about what the crocodiles are closest to the boat at the moment. And let me give another example. The most obvious one is a security concern. Okay, I'm not smearing an entire community by raising this. But last year, when there were 3 attacks, one after the other, in this country, when the attack in Westminster, that was a British-born convert to Islam. The second is of a young man whose parents were given asylum because they were fleeing Gaddafi, and he was a member, the father of a Libyan Islamic fighting group, which was a jihadist group that was falling out with Gaddafi. So we gave him asylum in the 90s. His son, at the age of 22, blows up 22 young girls for going to an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester one night. And a few weeks later, it's a group of people, to my mind, none of whom should have been in this country. One man from Pakistan who claimed asylum in the 90s, another man who came in some years ago who pretended to be from Libya, who was actually from Morocco, was of a different name, different age, lied about everything, stayed here. Then he slashes a load of people's throats while shouting, "This is for Allah," on a Saturday night on London Bridge. This is on my mind, and I think it's on a lot of people's minds. And I resent the accusation that if one says, should, for instance, those attackers... Of course, what always happens after this is there's a bureaucratic political discussion. Theresa May says, we've got to look at what the tech companies can do to sort of, one of the London Bridge attackers was on a Channel 4 documentary a few years ago called My Brother the Jihadist. Okay. So actually, all she needs to do is turn on the telly. This guy was advertising himself. And what we do is this bureaucratic one, and then now we have the weird, morose, don't look back in anger response to these things. And I think, along with a lot of the public, resent this claim.
Yeah, but
that this stuff happens. That this stuff happens, and that we never talk about whether the people should even have been here. What we did wrong in our immigration and asylum and identity policies to mean that they were here. What the stages are that the whole game tilts. And this is an important point to make. In 2015, at the height of the migration crisis, in one night in Paris, 130 people are mown down with Kalashnikovs and blown up at a rock concert in the center of Paris. And the people who did it were French and Belgian born, but they had been going in and out of Europe using the migrant routes because they knew they could do it, and they were training in Syria to do this. Now, this is an interesting one. Angela Merkel, along with Juncker and others, remained quite quiet immediately after the Paris attacks. Why? Because they become aware of something which I am very, very worried about, which is that if we do not talk about this now, the whole thing can flip, and it flips in this way. So far, if you are one of the people in the political mainstream or in the journalistic mainstream who says, let them come, you've only got points to win. It's only you that looks good. What if at some point things like Paris in November 2015 become regular? And the public turn around to the politicians and say, you did this to us. You were so lax with our security, you didn't care about borders, you didn't care who was here, and now our children are dead. Well, what happens then? And that's what the politicians should be thinking about, among other things.
Well, two things. Obviously, Europe's people seem to be taking that approach right now.
Yes.
Totally the vote in Italy was almost exclusively an anti-immigration vote. And then we have those countries in the centre of Europe, which are
take a divergent view.
Take a divergent view, yes. From Austria, Hungary, the Czechia, Poland, and Slovakia.